Hello, this is Sid, and you're listening to The Economic Story. In this episode, I want to review the functioning of markets through an example. The point is that if you understand markets well, you should be more comfortable interacting with them, trading in them. How do markets function? If you really want to understand markets, you need to get a grasp of how they function. To simplify things, I'll just look at products-based markets. But you can apply the same logic to services as well. Setting up the context. Buyers come looking for certain products or get introduced to products they might need or want within the market. Either way, demand gets generated on the buyer side. If buyers actually want to buy, they will have to bring in money. So currency comes into the market along with the buyer. Sellers come with products to sell. I mean, it could also be services, but as we discussed, focused on products. Sellers decide how much they want to sell their product for, and buyers decide how much they want to buy the product for. Obviously, for this purpose, they exchange information. Buyers and sellers typically look to either historical prices or other similar markets to get an idea of how to go about the price. The trade. Typically, buyers always want to buy for less, and sellers always want to sell for more. When quoted, the price that the buyer has in mind is called the bid price. I'm going to be getting a little bit more technical in this section, but bear with me. Okay, so the bid price. Let's say that's about 50 cents for an apple. When quoted the price the seller has in mind, it is called the ask price. Let's say 55 cents for that same apple. And the gap between the two prices is known as the bid-ask spread, or the spread in simple. In this case, the spread is basically 5 cents. Since there is a gap between how much the buyer wants to buy for and how much the seller wants to sell for, a sale cannot happen. Now, how do we get to a sale? There are three possible ways in which this can work out. The buyer and the seller negotiate and mutually agree upon a price which is somewhere in the middle, let's say 52 cents for the apple. In this case, the sale can happen at 52 cents. A sale for the transaction is also known as the trade, and the price that it gets sold is going to be recorded as the last trade, which can be referenced by other sellers and buyers selling apples of similar kind. There is another way this whole thing could resolve. Let's say if a new buyer comes into the negotiation and then they agree to buy at 55 cents, which is what the seller wanted to sell for. Similarly, is another way in which, let's say, a new prospective seller comes into the negotiation with an apple, which is pretty much the same type, same size, same quality as the other one the seller wanted to sell, the original seller wanted to sell. In this case, though, the new seller basically asked for only 50 cents, which is what the buyer wanted to pay from the beginning. In this case, the trade also takes place. The price at which the trade takes place is typically known as the last trade price or the last price, and gets recorded typically in the history or the price history of this product and within this product market. Now, that may not be the only way this whole thing gets resolved. The scenario can be complicated by throwing in a few other complicated sub-scenarios. Here is, let's say, another flow of it. What if the buyer finds the 55 cents too high and nobody else appears? Nobody else appears to buy at that price. The buyer can always go to a different seller or a different market and buy from there. And if they cannot find another market that with that quality of an apple below 55 cents, well, they can go to a lower quality of an apple, with, let's say, the same seller or a different seller for which it's being quoted at 50 cents. It may not taste as good, but it might just solve their problem. And what if they do not like the apple that is sold for below 55 cents? Well, they can decide to buy an orange, in that case, let's say for 45 cents. And what if the seller finds 50 cents too low? The seller can always go to a different buyer or a different market. What if the seller can't find anyone to buy at 55 cents? And let's say it's getting close to the market close and the seller definitely needs to sell, otherwise they'll have to trash the apple. They can always lower the price in that case now to, let's say, 45 cents and perhaps find a buyer if this buyer had already left. Right? Perhaps the next time they can come to the market to sell, they can either lower the quality of the apple they bring in, for which they figured out that there is going to be demand, or they can decide to sell this apple for actually either 50 cents or 45 cents, for which they know that there is going to be a buyer present. From this example, what do you believe markets help buyers and sellers gain? First of all, they found out that the price of a specific quality and a specific type of apple sells for. That is very important information, identifying the price of something. The buyer found out that if they had only 45 cents, what kind of apple they should expect to be able to buy with that money. And the seller found out that if there is any demand actually for an apple that costs 55 cents for that specific type of apple, the quality and all. And we saw that for a market to function and for buyers and sellers to operate, they need information. Buyers need also currency, and both sides need to be able to decide the value of what is being bought and sold. These are very important pieces or elements that are important for a market to function.